The 2024 draft is bound to look really interesting, with the Tigers in particular set to shape the majority of the first round. And I am going to deep dive, trust me, you have no idea how deep I'm about to make this go, into how the Tigers can pull off one of the best draft hauls of all time that have not been handed to a club. So Gold Coast and GWS and those compromised drafts, they don't count in the best draft haul ever. But Richmond have a chance to cash in on a mass exodus the right way. Let's talk about it. And if you could, click that like button if you enjoy this kind of draft content. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already to join the Daz Talks Footy family. I would appreciate that a lot. Anywho, the prerequisite here, or the domino piece that's needed for any of this to make sense, is Chad Warner stays at Sydney and Freo go all in on Shea Bolton. That is how all of this is going to work. So, there you go. That needs to happen. Now, a lot of this is going to go off what the media have told us, and although I've got people that I talk to that I trust as well, we can only go off the information we've been given. I'm going to try and do the least amount of guesswork I can in this kind of video and go off info that I know or info that I trust. So work with me. And if you treat it as a fun exercise, just come with me. I think you'll enjoy yourself. So, let's start with the so ridiculous it just might happen, and reports are it's going to happen, in order for Freo to get Shea Bolton and West Coast to get Liam Baker, and for both of those teams to be happy and satisfied and all of those good things, they're going to need to trade with each other. West Coast need all three of Freo's first round picks because they're going to give up pick 3. So Freo are going to take pick 3 and hang on to their own pick 25. They are going to give West Coast pick 8, 13, and 17 as it stands right now. Stay with me. There are reports that this is going to happen, or is very, very likely to be discussed about in a massive way. So again, guys, don't take it too seriously. Take it at face value and just come with me on the journey. Alright, so let's get the easy bit out of the way. Pick 17 for Liam Baker. Cool, done, dusted. And while we're talking about the Eagles, they are going to apparently sign Jack Graham to a deal that is set to net Richmond compensation in the second round. Now, again, for the purposes of this exercise, I am going to say that's the start of the second round. So that means Richmond have the first 2 picks of the second round. Currently pick 21 and 22 because Sydney and Gold Coast traded for North Melbourne's end of first round compensation picks that they received from the AFL. So the first round of the draft, even before you factor in father-sons, academies, all those kinds of things, will have 20 picks in it. So then Richmond get pick 21 for Jack Graham, effectively. And they also have the first pick of the second round unofficially, which would be pick 22 in this exercise. All right? Cool. Let's get to the Shea Bolton trade in just a moment. Why, apart from the fact that they need a pick to go in the Liam Baker trade, why would West Coast sacrifice a top 3 pick for 2 in the top 13? Well, the answer to that is quite simple. Get the young talent in the door. Going into this draft, West Coast have got pick 3, pick 23, 59, and that's it. So, yeah, you're going to need to make some sacrifices. We know that they are going full blast rebuild. Now, we know they're keeping Elliot Yeo, and they're going to try and keep their older guys as best they can, but they need more young talent going in the door. So, tick for them, 8 and 13. And in such a well-rounded and even draft, you just never know. So that's West Coast's strategy done. Let's go through the Shea Bolton trade. which I think could look something like this. So the pick 3, aforementioned, Freo's first round pick next year, which if they're backing themselves to be a top 4 team would be about pick 14 at that point in time. And this year's pick 25. And they would obviously receive Shea Bolton, and we'll throw in a pick there. I'm just saying 51. It could be any of 33, 39, 41, 51. If you want to argue the semantics over that, guys, you can if you want. But again, that pick isn't really going to matter as much. Okay, but I think there is a little sweetener in there somewhere. Now, if you're telling me that Freo only really have to give up not as much as you think, because you're thinking they're giving up pick 3, pick 8, they're not really. Freo are effectively giving up not as much as you think. Okay? Now, it's still a lot. It really is. I promise you. But they're in the premiership window. So if Shea Bolton is their premiership piece, then this isn't much at all. Right? Because you're going, it's one pick in the single digits, one single digit pick, right? Because you're going, well, they've given up pick 8 and pick 3. Not really. They've effectively just thrown away their pick 8 with other balls. If you think of it like bouncy balls, right? They've thrown away 3 bouncy balls, and the one that they've got back, they've thrown to someone else. You haven't given up 4 bouncy balls there. You've just been the middle person for one of them, and you've thrown the other 3 away. So you've effectively giving up while it sounds like you're giving up 4 first-round picks, right? Which I understand that logic. But how did you get to 4 first-round picks here? Because you've got the 3 from this draft and your first from next year. Before you panic, don't stress, okay? Because it's cost them in this deal Lockie Schultz, Liam Henry, their first rounder this year and next year. So 2 players who this year have not been great, 2 first rounders, and a pick swap with Port, and a second rounder. That's not giving up that much. That is shrewd trading, I should say, jeepers, that's done the job. If you look at this as you've given up Lockie Schultz, Liam Henry, 3 picks between 23 and 33, and a couple of first, it's not that bad. It's really not. And if it gets you closer to a prelim in a granny, go for your life. I am steadfast in this isn't nearly as bad as 4 first-round picks sound, considering that they were able to give up not a lot for Port's pick. Lockie Schultz, they have not been burned by that trade yet, and they haven't been burned by Liam Henry going to St Kilda yet. They haven't been burned here at all. You are giving up 2 first-rounders. 2 first-rounders. And pieces, effectively, for Shea Bolton. And if you can't see that as a tick, I'm going to respectfully disagree. And then the last trade in terms of the Exodus, Daniel Rioli, which I did a video that hardly anyone watched or saw, so thanks YouTube, that would net them 2 first-rounders, which in my opinion is going to be 12 and 20. I do not believe that Gold Coast are going to give up a single-digit pick for Daniel Rioli, regardless of them, or him I should say, winning probably Richmond's best and fairest this year. I just can't see that happening. So, and again, Gold Coast are going to have the points to match the Leo Lombard. They will want something next year in order to help them bid on their 4 academy kids next year. So that's why I've thrown the 2025 third in there. Keep both parties happy, which I know isn't really how AFL negotiations work, but arguing the semantics rather than the big picture here is, I think, going to be the better way to go. So Richmond then get 12 and 20, send Rioli in your 3rd round pick next year. And then what does that look like for Richmond? What are they getting in? What are they getting out? Well, here is what they're getting, which is an abundance of picks in the top 25 this year. You're getting a first rounder next year, probably in the teens. And that's your compensation for your 4 players that already want out, pick 51 and a third round pick next year. It's not ideal that all four of those players want out at the same time, and I don't think that's going to be all of them. I think Camden McIntosh could be working his way to WA as well, but I'm not including him here because that's, again, more of a vibe than a media report, so take that as you will. So in terms of Richmond, massive win here for the Tigers. Now, of course, you can't go into this kind of video going, only one team's going to do well and everyone else is going to fleece, and I've spoken about what Freo have given up already, but the net positive that this nets the Eagles as well as they are effectively going to get Liam Baker, Jack Graham, pick 8 and pick 13 for pick 3. They're probably the biggest winners of the lot so far. And again, I understand if you're going through some trepidation for the Dockers here, but a flag is worth it. Right? And if you go for a football club that's won premierships recently, you might even scoff at this. That's fine. But Freo don't have that premiership culture. But they're going to be close. All of their good players are young. It's not as if Shea's old, just quietly. That'll keep burning and building together. He could be their last piece, in which case, you'd burn your house to the ground to see a flag. I wouldn't. I rent. But still. So, at this point in time, I can make a case that all three clubs have won here, which in any kind of trade period is extraordinary. Extraordinary. Now, could all of this be kind of wrapped up neatly in a bow with a three-way trade just between the three clubs and then just do the Daniel Rioli deal separate? Yes, it would, but I'm just going to give you all the individual pieces anyway, so that's what I've done. So back to the club at hand, where does this leave the Tigers? Well, they have 10 picks now in the top 41. Which is, and say it with me, kids, fucked. It's so overpowered. It's ridiculous. Well, what do you do from here? Now, in my opinion, I think Richmond need to do the 2-for-1. Sacrifice 2 and move up. And I think the perfect club that can do this is Melbourne. Now, from here on out, we really are doing some finagling, but again, like with most trades, and it's probably the downside of doing trades, to be honest, is I try to keep both parties as happy as they can be, which isn't really how clubs negotiate, but still, we work through it, and if you've enjoyed the journey so far, I really appreciate it. This has already been so much fun. But the Melbourne deal, so Melbourne have got pick 6, which is a weird pick for them to have, because we know that Alex Neil-Bullen wants to go back to South Australia, which will probably net a pick anywhere between 15 and 25, I reckon, somewhere in there. But pick 6 is still a weird pick for them to have, because what are they going to do with that? Because it is so midfield heavy. Like, Luke Traynor is definitely not going to be there. We think Petrarca is going to stay. We don't know what's happening with Jack Viney, so sure, I could see them going for a midfielder. I think Josh Smiley would be a really good fit if Oliver isn't there. I don't know whether Clayton, Josh Smiley and Petrarca can work in the same midfield, but the opportunities it may present for Trent Rivers like he's taken this year and Judd McVie I think would be a really smooth mover in there. What can Tommy Sparrow potentially do with more CBAs? They drafted Colton Tolstrup, who could get this further opportunity for sure. But I can see some massive advantage in Melbourne doing a deal like this. So pick 6 for 12 and 20. And I think the massive advantage for this is that they're going to be able to get, again, in a really even draft, they are going to be able to get 3 good youngsters to plug some holes. Okay? And the advantage here for Richmond is they're now going to have pick 1, pick 3, pick 6, which, yay, awesome. And they are still going to have an abundance of picks in this spot. Now, I don't think Richmond are going to take 9 draftees in this draft, but again, there are going to be clubs that are going to want to hunt these picks down. I think these clubs in particular are going to want to chomp at the bit for the picks kind of beyond 17 at this point. So I think of the Hawks, who definitely don't want to use a pick where they're at, but they could swoop into a pick in the 20s maybe to try and finagle something in there. For sure, all of those other clubs, it makes so much sense to use future assets to try to get into this draft pool. Richmond's going to be the first club you call in a scenario like this, so that makes a lot of sense for mine. But here are Richmond's draft picks using all of these scenarios so far on the screen. Now, I do want to point out that pick 20 on the screen should be pick 21, because pick 20 did go to Melbourne, so I apologise for that. Bad graphics works dazzling, but it's been a hell of a day, I promise you. So if you treat that 20 as 21, that's going to make a lot of sense. Now, let's say, kind of cut the guesswork out of the picks yet, what if they just went, stuff it, let's get 9 youngsters in? Because why not, right? What would you do with that? Well, don't worry, I've got that answer as well. I'm pretty sure everyone knows by now that I think Jagger Smith to Richmond just makes oodles of sense. You can see any mock draft that I've done here. So I've got Jagger going pick 1 there, and pick 3 I'm going to go with Harvey Langford, who's actually going to play in their VFL team over the weekend, of which this is being recorded. 2 midfielders makes a lot of sense. Finn O'Sullivan's definitely, a chance here. Sid Draper, if they really like him, I know, but again, this is going to be a little bit of what I would do. So again, pinch of salt, guys. Just come with me on the journey. That's all that I'm looking for. But you start your draft with 2 midfielders. You've already got Kane McAuliffe, who I'm a fan of, and they can move from there. Could be seen as a bit of a reach here, but Toby Travalia to the Tigers would make a lot of sense at 6. At that point, you're replacing a Daniel Rioli type. It's not like for like, but an offensive, effective, rebounding halfback flanker would be a really good fit for this young Tiger team. We've seen players that are starting their careers at halfback getting indoctrinated into the game more. Dacos, Sheasel, McKercher, these kinds of players. Now that is Toby's one wood, which would be a really good way to get him started in a side like this. It wouldn't be like he's the number 1 option there, considering they've still got Jaden Short down there as well, so I don't mind that pick in the slightest. I think later on they could go for a guy like Xavier Lindsay, a guy on the wing. They've already got Hugo Ralphsmith, who is showing more and more every week, but considering I'm not 100% sure if Camden McIntosh is going to be there, Marlon Pickett's got his own stuff going on, plus his age. That means, hey, having another youngster on the other side who is of quality is never going to be a bad thing, and I'm a massive fan of what Xavier has been able to do in the run home. So you start your midfield, so you've got 2 midfielders, you've got a halfback flanker, you've got a wingman. Don't worry, we're getting to the tools. Back-to-back picks at opposite ends of the ground. I've gone Harry O'Farrell as the defender. I just think he's going to be a bit more AFL ready with his body. You think of your Dylan Grimes kind of replacement, your back-shoulder defender, dogged, does everything right. I'm a massive Hoff fan. Don't even know if that's his nickname, but I'm going with it now. Absolutely. And then I've got Jack Whitlock for the other end of the ground. I think Job Shanahan would be the perfect fit, but they would probably in this draft have to take him at 6. I definitely don't think he makes it to pick 17. And you'd probably be better off just keeping your pick 12 and your pick 20 and taking Job at 12, hoping he gets there. If that's the plan that you wanted to have, wouldn't knock Richmond at all for doing that, but that is what it is. But Harry O'Farrell at one end, Jack Whitlock at the other, and you can start building from there. Considering Lynch is still there, we know what they're doing with Cozzy. It hasn't quite worked out the way they want it to. Samson Ryan is still going to be there, but they want him to be a ruckman, I think. Don't really know what Richmond are doing with their tall forwards at the moment, but you put in a 200-centimetre guy who can move as well as Jack does, that's a really good start, especially considering that Tom Lynch is going to finish his career, if he's healthy, as that gorilla at the top of the square. So let Jack use his athletic profile, maybe a bit like Cole Shadir at the Hawks, but Jack is taller, to impact the game in that way. Next up, I'm going with Hamish Davis, the WA boy who is just going beautifully at the moment. 191 centimetres, a forward midfield impact player. If I'm Richmond, personal opinion here, I am sitting down with Tyler Sonsie come the end of the year, showing him all of the Dylan Moore highlights and gone, hey Tyler, this is you now. Do that as best you can, and let's train you into the best version of you playing the high half-forward role. I think that would be perfect, and I think adding Hamish to the other side of that, considering you've already got Ryan Mansell, you've already got Seth Campbell, you've already got Morris Rioli Jr., considering the fact that you don't need that stereotypical smallish forward, right? You can still have your high half-forward, that being Tyler Sonsie, and you can have your connecting piece. Think Tom Lynch from Adelaide style. Hamish and Tom are not the same player, But in terms of the connection piece that you would want, I think he would be an awesome fit. I have that little faith in what Richmond are doing with their tools. I'm going to finish with 2 more. I think Thomas Sims could be a guy they could look at. A lot of the tall forwards at this point are going to be off the board. It would be astonishing to me if at this pick there is another tall that isn't Thomas Sims, but is around that group that we all expect to go at that point. And I know with things like father-sons academies, these picks are going to look really, really frazzled. I'm just going off the numbers at the time of recording. Okay, guys, so don't come at me for that. There are probably 40 things in this video you can disagree with. Don't come at me with the pick numbers. Okay, and then we're going to finish with a guy who I love, and that's Noah Mraz, the Dandenong Stingrays. Raw, tall defender, get some more key position depth in there. And you might be thinking, Daz, you've only really taken 2 midfielders here. Is that going to be enough? Well, considering the long withstanding contracts of Tim Taranto, Jacob Hopper, and these guys, we know Shea Bolton and Dusty are not going to be there in this iteration, so you need some spark. I understand all that, but Kane McAuliffe is going to step in there. But don't forget, if Richmond do want to go down this path and just cash in on the Exodus this year, then they still have their first round pick next year. And they will be able to go and get a Willem Dersma or a Dyson Sharp, and there's another midfielder there. They don't need to have the complete package. And you've got to keep in mind as well, take away the guys that I've already spoken about in this draft, because this isn't the message that I want to preach to those guys. But if you've got 10 picks in the first 41, or 9 picks in the first 41 in this case, not all of them are going to work. They're just not. Statistically, they're all not going to work. You're not going to get 9 massive ticks. Now, you could get some guys who perform. All 9 of them could play AFL footy. 6 of them might. 3 of them may not work. But it is a hell of a lot better to have more lottery balls here and to try and find that next wave than it is to go, we're going to keep blokes that aren't here. And I think that's kind of the point of this video, of me going, if the Exodus is going to happen, here's how you cash in as best you can. All right? So I can't sit here and say that Richmond have got a problem without providing some solutions, which is what I've done. And I hope you've enjoyed, because this has been amazing to research and put together, and I've enjoyed it a lot. I hope you did too. So comment below, let me know your thoughts. I'm going to try and reply to all of you, which I love doing in the comments. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe to join the Daz Talks Footy family. I hope you are having an amazing week, and I will see you very soon.